know a lot of parents who they fear having some of these conversations because maybe they struggle themselves with mental health. Maybe they
Mhm.
have been diagnosed with bipolar disorder, or maybe they themselves have been diagnosed with some form of depression and they don't want to talk to their kids about it because they feel like, oh, well, if I tell them, then they're going to look at me in a certain way. Like, how do parents address that stigma that's still surrounding mental health? And what do they do to maybe even encourage their children maybe to research and do some of their own investigative work in terms of their mental health? Like,
Yeah,
how do we get past that stigma? Parents don't want to talk about it.
right. Joy, I think the way to get past the stigma is doing what you just said. Talk about it. It's living in what is the truth, being authentic. Because the more we hide, the more we have this vicious cycle over and over and over again, especially in African American households and Latina households and even Caucasian households. It's the same thing. It's like you have that uncle that got some kind of, we got that, all of us got that uncle. Something wrong, right? Something wrong. We know something wrong, but everybody they don't want to say it what's wrong. And it goes on through the family. There's some every time I ask my clients, like, do you have a history of a history of mental illness in your family? Like, we don't know. Like, I don't know, but I know I got a cousin that did this, or my sister acts like this, but she's never gotten tested for this. But I think she may be bipolar. But in my family that they don't do this. That's literally the same response I get to most of my African American clients, and even some whites, because it's not, people don't want to acknowledge their shame.
Mm,
There's a lot of fear that's there. But the only way, honestly, this is what I teach, even with trauma therapy, the only way to get over trauma is to go through, to deal with it, to face it, to acknowledge that it exists. Because what we're doing in our families is we're closing our eyes and pretending. But
mm.
what that is doing is creating a vicious cycle of, I call it willful denial. And willful denial is creating this vicious cycle of unhealed people. And when you're not healed, what happens within the family dynamic? You raise up other people who are not healed within that dynamic. And that cycle creates dysfunction, but we don't realize that it's dysfunction because we make dysfunctional functional because we're living in this space. But in order for us to be healed people, we have to acknowledge what is the truth, be authentic.